Shabbat Shalom. Before we start tonight, we have a few announcements. Elaine, are you given the, where's Elaine? Elaine, there you are. You're going to talk about the retreat? Bruce, you're going to talk? Yes.
We'll have a slide soon for this, but anyhow, just real quickly, about a year ago we made a commitment to reactivate the supper club, which we have, and our supper club has been going for a little bit less than a year, but that's really good. Another commitment we made from the program committee was to restart the annual retreats. So we've had a committee meeting this summer. Elaine and Kathy Radner and Yossi and Dorit Bengal, Cindy Hillenberg and myself and Jeff. Rabbi Jeff, we've been meeting and talking, and wanted to let you know that our first retreat is going to be the weekend of May 2nd through the 4th. You'll get announcements and we'll have slides and handouts. Of 2025. We're going to be doing it in Cincinnati. I'll let Rabbi say a little bit about it, but we plan on getting there. We have a hotel that's really nice and has a lot of great facilities and fun things to do. It's about 8 miles out of the center of town, but it's really comfortable, and it's got next to a food hall, a lot of events right around it. We're going to be getting there about we'll start at about 5 o'clock. So from 5 o'clock on Friday through 12 noon on Sunday, we'll be having meals together. There are going to be some tours. Jeff will mention a little bit more about that. We're going to have some discussion groups. We're going to have some afterglow time in the evening for those who are inclined to hang out late and have a little good time together. So do you want to mention a little bit about some of our plans?
Sure.
And we're also trying to keep prices reasonable. Like I think room rates are around $189, and then we will have a registration fee to cover all the meals. There'll also be like a cash bar at a designated room that will be, available in the evening and stuff like that.
You want to add something?
I was going to add a little and mention the tribute dash, but if you want to wrap this up.
You want to do that still, or no?
It's up to you. You want me to do it?
It's up to you. It's up to you.
You want
I thought we were going to make the grand opening. It's up to you. Go ahead.
I was going to,
Well, while they're talking, I'll mention this to
say
you.
it at the meeting, but we can't.
One of the things we are doing is we realize there's probably two groups. One group for the retreat, they will know within the next several weeks they want to go. And then there will be people who are not quite certain if they can go. Since this is our first time, we have to sign a contract to have a certain number of rooms guaranteed at the rate, which means that we will let people know very soon when the deadline is if you want a guaranteed room rate. After that, there's no guarantee that you'll have the rate, but if it's close within that, you'll probably be able to get the rate. If not, if it takes you 2, 3, 4, 5 months to decide, there's a good chance you'll end up with the rate. And we got around 189. The rates are like north of 250 a night on a regular.
So among the things that we already know we're going to be doing is a visit to Beth Adam congregation. Beth Adam was one of the original humanistic congregations. There were reasons that they pulled away from the Society for Humanistic Judaism. I've told the story on a couple of occasions not that long ago about why and how they tried to join the Reform movement and were given the big back in the 90s on that. But the new rabbi there is just a lovely person, and we've talked about getting together on Friday night, so that's in the works. And then a visit to what may be the last opportunity, one of the last opportunities to the Hebrew Union College, where both Sherwin and I were ordained, which will include a tour of the College Institute, a tour of the Skirball Museum, the Clow Rare Book Room, and the American Jewish Archives, which is the largest archive of American Jewish history in the world. And so we're going to have that on Sunday, and then that'll be our last thing that we do. And I'm hoping I'll get to maybe do a little teaching as well, maybe a little course, a little introduction to why Cincinnati is so important in American Jewish history, even though it's lost a lot of its Jewish population. So I think it's going to be, and they're going to do all the fun stuff, and I think it's going to be great. All right, so Elaine has something else that she wants to talk about.
Just grab my phone.
Oh, here you go.
Some of you were at the annual meeting where I focused on tributes and all the different ways. We used it as one of the ways to raise money is, you know, instead of bring a bottle of wine to a friend's or whatever, make a tribute in the person's honor, and various other ways to make tributes to help our bottom line. So I was originally going to roll this out at the high holidays, but the high holidays start October 2nd. So it's another month. So in the interest of kind of getting the gears moving, and I'm going to bring this up again and again and again, so you'll hear it often. We have another match this year. So we have a $50,000 match. Any tribute from now till the end of this year, up to $50,000 will be matched, any tribute that is made. And we are probably going to have what is called, and I'll explain it more later, a tribute bank, where you can make a donation and say, this is my tribute bank, and then throughout the next few months, you can say, I'm going to draw on my bank and give a tribute to Cindy Hellenberg for her great smile, or yeah. As long as you have the money in the bank, you can draw on your funds and make tributes to people.
Which will be twice what you put in.
Exactly. So just wanted to mention that, and I'll mention it again and again until you just say, ooh, when can I make a tribute?
So your friends will think you're putting in, you're giving them a $50 tribute when it's really only a $25 tribute, and none of us will tell. A couple more announcements. These are on behalf of Audrey and the Social Justice Committee. There are Get Out the Vote in-person workshops coming up, and she's got I call these Audrey paddles. She has an Audrey paddle to give you more information. There is a collection box for the Oakland County Foster Closet. You probably saw it on the little coffee table that's out there by the couches. And finally, the Walk Against Hate, sponsored by the ADL, is coming up on September, I want to say 29th, September the 29th. And we have a large number of people, I think, at this point that are coming. If you're interested in joining our team, see Audrey. So thank you for all the work that you and the SJC do. I can't see that from here. Oh, okay, yeah. I said those, yes. Ruth has one too, which I can see even less. But, but thank you for holding up the piece of paper with lines on it. These are already beyond trifocals. They're like quadfocals. So, our readers tonight are Barry Safer, Bob and Susie Citron, Dan Schechter, hey, Shabbat Shalom Schechters, Esther Ingber, Mark and Deborah Luria, Judy Boski, Amy Good, and David Finkel, and Lonnie Fleischer. And to light the candles in just a moment, we'll invite Glenn and Edie Mello. We'll begin, Arthur, if you will, with the first slide. As these Shabbat candles that we are about to light give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who bring light. I'd like to invite the Mellows to light our Shabbat candles.
Baruch haor ba'olam. Baruch haor ba'adam. Baruch haor ba'shalom. Ba'shalom. Baruch haor. Baruch haor. Ba'shalom.
Our ancestors hallowed the Sabbath day. In dark times, it was a refuge for them, and in times of prosperity, it gave them rest and joy. As a community, we celebrate the opportunity to gather in that spirit, even as we manage Sabbath anew. May we too find rest from the day's work and refuge from our cares. May we too feel the warmth of love and companionship. May we too feel our joys heightened and our sorrows softened by the love we give and receive. May we be blessed with Sabbath joy. May we be blessed with Shabbat peace. May we be blessed with Shabbat light.
Lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, la Shabbat. Lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, la Shabbat. Naria, naria, la yom simchatenu, nikadma b'shalom. Naria, naria, le'yom simchatenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, la Shabbat. Lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, la Shabbat. Naria, naria, la yom simchatenu, b'shalom. Naria, la yom simchatenu, bizmirot naria lo. Lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, ranana, la Shabbat. Lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, lachuna ranana, la Shabbat.
Thank you very much. That was lovely. Oh, thank you, thank you. Okay. Well, to cross this threshold of this room on Shabbat is to enter a place free from the demands of our very days. We step away from our daily routine in an attempt to gain perspective on where we've been and where we're going. At all times, in all other places, we may feel fragile and alone. Yet here we are, Birmingham Temple, to find strength, to build community, as we look with wonder at the universe and seek our place with its vastness.
To this place, we come to lengthen our perspective,
To this place we come to question and explore.
In this place, we awaken our imaginations.
In this place we draw strength as we allow ourselves to dream.
Together, we share the challenge of an ever-changing world, a world often beyond our control. Together, we seek to find meaning, calm our anxieties, understand our purpose. Together, we share the burdens and blessings of responsibility. Together, we bond as a community, a true gift of Shabbat.
Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkinoteka Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkinoteka Yisrael. Likrat Shabbat, lechu v'nelcha, lechu v'nelcha. Ki mikor habracha, mikor habracha. Ma tovu alecha Yaakov, alecha Yaakov, mishkinoteka Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkinoteka Yisrael.
Our capacity to pursue lives of integrity depends on our freedom of inquiry. One person's truth may be another's heresy. Unfettered investigation is the only path to knowledge. We must each be free to find our way. Baruch Spinoza put it this way: people's habits of mind differ. Some more readily embrace one form of faith and some another. This is because what moves one person to pray may move another to scoff. I conclude that all people should be free to choose for themselves the foundations of their creed. Faith should be judged only by its fruits.
There's a place with answers we are seeking. There's a place to find our light of hope. Where's the strength to realize our vision? Yesh makom b'tochenu, yesh makom b'tochenu. Look within yourself, you'll find it there. There's a place with wisdom that can guide us. There's a place where we know what's right or wrong. Where's the path to peace that we all long for? Yesh makom b'tochenu, yesh makom b'tochenu. Look within yourself, you'll find it there.
a picture of my dad today. His funeral was 10 years ago. This is Ziggy. Is it gonna stay up? Ziggy graduated high school. Shabbat Shalom. I applied my mind to know and search out, to seek understanding and explanation of things. I sought to find words of delight in what is correctly written. I sought for words of truth. Understanding is a greater stronghold to the wise than 10 rulers that are in a city.
Blessed
are
are
those
those
who seek words of truth. Out of the universe, source of our lives, we develop the power of mind and its quest for life's meaning. Yet knowledge is not received as a gift. We must search it for it to attain understanding.
נפתח לנו שערי צדק, חן וחסד ורחמים. נפתח לנו שערי צדק, חן וחסד ורחמים. אלה שערים לשלום, נפתח לנו ונבוא בם. אלה שערים לשלום, נפתח לנו ונבוא בם. נפתח לנו שערי צדק, חן וחסד ורחמים. נפתח לנו שערי צדק, חן וחסד ורחמים.
Shabbat Shalom. It's good to see you all. Every philosophy of life distinguishes between what is reality and what is illusion. It is sometimes hard to make that distinction. Our needs get in the way of our better judgment. There are certain painful truths that we try to avoid. There are certain facts that make us uncomfortable. There are certain desires that make us feel guilty. The world is not always the way we want it to be. Death, injustice, and change are not always the most popular alternatives. Illusion is very tempting.
Supernatural worlds, in particular, are seductive. They avoid death. They always reward the just. They resist change. They are full of the power we feel we lack. When we are feeling vulnerable, they are easy to believe in. To accept nature, its beautiful side and its ugly side, its useful side and its harmful side, is not easy. To accept the universe with all its aloof grandeur and with all its vast indifference to our personal fate is more than difficult, but it makes us strong. And it makes us see that we need to rely more on ourselves and on other people. As humanists, we are never fully satisfied with nature, but we learn to live with it honestly.
Evori oribi, evo tikvati, tikvati bi, evo kochi, kochi bi, vegam bad, vegam bad, evo kochi, kochi bi. Where is my light? My light is in me. Where is my hope? My hope is in me. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you. Where is my strength? My strength is in me and in you, and in you.
As in the traditional Jewish service, our humanistic Jewish liturgy, thank you, expresses the longing for peace. Yet, while tradition evokes an imagined peacemaker in the high heavens to make peace upon us, our text reminds us that peace is an exclusively human responsibility. There is, however, no universally agreed upon humanistic perspective on war. Some believe violence should always be avoided. Others hold that sometimes war is the only way to impede greater harm.
Despite our differences, humanists are united in a commitment to promoting peace, first and foremost, by working for it in our own lives, within our communities, and among the nations. We also agree that nations committed to secularism and real democracy are best suited to promoting dialogue that reduces tension and increases the mutual understanding necessary for peaceful coexistence.
Though we all long for peace throughout our recorded history, human beings have always engaged in warfare. This makes it difficult to discern whether or how it can ever be completely eliminated. Whatever else we humanists may believe about war and peace, we agree that the outcomes of our choices are our responsibility alone. Let us endeavor to make peace in the world for ourselves and all people.
Nase shalom ba'olam, nase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol ha'olam ve'imru shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, shalom, shalom, aleinu, ve'akol, ve'akol, ha'olam, ve'imru, shalom, shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, nase shalom aleinu, ve'al kol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom. Nase shalom ba'olam, shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'akol, ve'akol ha'olam, ve'imru shalom, shalom.
Sorry about that, my pages got stuck there. In this community where we find strength and common purpose, we turn our minds and hearts toward all those who need our love and support. Those who are ill, those who suffer pain of the body or spirit, those who are lonely, those who have been wronged. Tonight, we extend our well wishes to Jim Walker, a beloved member of our congregation, and to anyone whom you're thinking about tonight, whose name you'd like to share. We'll start on this side. Amy. Anybody else on this side? Over here, anybody? David. Did we miss anybody at all? May all who suffer know that they are not alone, that we are there. May they be healed quickly. May they experience a complete recovery, refuah shlema, the renewal of their bodies and the renewal of their spirits. At dark times in Jewish history, there were moments such as this one, at this point in Jewish services, when prayers were offered for those held hostage. The redemption of captives, pidyon shvuim, was considered an essential mitzvah. Sadly, we once again find ourselves in such a reality. In the spirit of our ancestors who lived through those terrible days, we voice these fervent hopes. May those who were taken captive find the courage to carry on. May those who love them not despair of their return. May they soon emerge from their confinement, whole in body and in spirit, to know once again the embrace of loved ones.
Kom hakoach betochenu mekorot habracha mivrotenu. May the source of strength that dwells so deep within us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Shalom. Kom hakoach betochenu mekorot haka mivrotenu. May those in need of healing know refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Shalom.
In memoriam, death cannot take that which is locked in our hearts. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. With our courage and our strength, we do not forget. Acts of kindness, deeds of courage will remain. Beauty created, wisdom shared, is not lost. With our tears and our sorrow, we remember. With our tears in our sorrow, we remember.
Our thoughts turn to those who are no longer with us, our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every people and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. We recall now our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died at this season in years past, and those whom we have taken into our hearts with our own. Tonight our congregation continues to mourn the sudden death, unexpected, of Jermaine Williams, who served us so ably for such a short time. Yehi zichro baruch. As we also, of course, tonight observe these yahrzeits. Ziga Alweiss, Max Baer, Jackie Bieber Grecken, Patricia Patty Becker, Francis Byrne, Charles Bonnet, Lawrence Dennis Castleman, Jacob Abraham Citron, Clara Cohen, Marilyn Dorfman, Stanley Dorfman, Rosa Fastovsky, Miriam Finkel, John Gardone, Jacqueline Gibbs, Justine Good, Earl Lapp, Sam Liederman, Esther Levin, Beverly Levy, Max Litke, Harry Lopez, Grigory Lumelsky, Harold Luria, Nettie Mandel, Shirley Malinsky, Michael Muroff, Lorraine Pivnik, Nathan Saginaw, Sally Saginaw, Shirley Silber, Samuel J. Walker, and Cheryl Young. I'm sure there are some names of other people of whom you're thinking tonight. If you'd like to share, please do. Yes. Esther. Anybody else on this side? Carol? Anybody we missed on this side? Anybody over on this side? Yes. Did we miss anybody else? We say, Yehi zichram livracha. May memories of them provide a blessing. And with this, we express our wish that at times when we miss them the most, we have the ability to recall them so that they come alive again in our hearts and our imagination and are indeed once again, as they always were, a blessing. If you can do so comfortably, please rise as we recite our humanistic interpretation of Kaddish. Together, Nit Gadal v'nit Kadash beruach ha'adam. Let us dignify and ennoble all people in the spirit of our shared humanity. Let us acclaim the preciousness of life. Let us show gratitude for life by approaching it with reverence. Let us embrace the whole world, even as we wrestle with its parts. Let us each in our own way take up our share in serving the world and seeking truth. May our commitment to life help us to strengthen healing of spirit and peace of mind. May justice and peace permeate and comfort the house of Israel and all those who dwell on earth. And let us say, Ken Yehi, may it be so. Please be seated. So sometimes the calendar just doesn't agree with what our plans are here. And for a variety of reasons, the talk that I'm about to give for Tisha B'Av should have been given 2 weeks ago. But, you know, the stories are and the lessons are the same. And I think that some of the learning from it is. And I'll leave you with a little post Tisha B'Av love, if you will, which I'll explain. If you didn't read my commentary, if you read my commentary, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So Tisha B'Av is really a journey into history. It's a journey into tradition. It's a journey into suffering. It's a journey into the agony of our people. If you don't already know what it is, just curious by a raise of hands, a show of hands, who knows what Tisha B'Av is already? All right, so not an inconsiderable number of people do not know. And I think that this is a day of observance that needs to, I think, be revived on the humanistic Jewish calendar, because while we may not observe it in a traditional way, and I'll talk about how they do it, it, I think, brings to mind some very important lessons, an opportunity to tell some important stories that I'm going to share with you tonight, a chance to, of course, explore the depths of Jewish suffering, of which there's been no small amount, but also to reflect upon the resilience of our people and the hope that we've always been able to carry forward. So most uncreatively, this holiday, not a holiday, this observance is named after the date on the calendar. Tisha B'Av simply means the 9th day of the month of Av. And that's the month we're in right now. It's the 5th month in the Jewish year. And don't be confused. I know you're all thinking it has been much more than 5 months since last Rosh Hashanah. But officially the Jewish year, because of the cockamamie way that it was put together, it has a birthday. We have a birthday of the world and its creation in September. Like you have a birthday, might not fall on January 1st. And then we also have the first month of the Jewish year, which, anyone? Nisan. The first is the first month technically, and that's the month of Passover. Officially, this holiday started with the destruction of the first of 2 temples that stood in Jerusalem. Now, we do have archaeological evidence for the existence of these places. The first temple was, though we don't have the actual structure to explore, by all means of comparison that we have to other temples and all the descriptions that tend to match up with other temples of other peoples. We believe it was a magnificent structure. It was said to have been inaugurated by King Solomon. He may be fictional, but many of the kings who came after him, and certainly the priesthood, was not fictional. And it stood for some number of hundreds of years until in the year 586 BC, at least according to tradition and according to external archaeological evidence, it was part of the conquest of the remaining of two Jewish kingdoms, the one called Judah or Judea, which was destroyed along with its temple and its notables and its royalty and its priesthood, taken into exile in Babylon, sometimes called Chaldea, today mostly modern Iraq. And that population, by the way, did not all return 150 years later when that was made possible. And in fact, the Jewish population of Iraq was one of the oldest diaspora Jewish communities in the world until the 1950s, when circumstances of anti-Semitism and other things that were happening led to their expulsion, and they went to live in Israel and are a sizable community there today. The destruction of the first temple is recounted in several biblical books. It's in 2 Kings. In fact, it's the closing of 2 Kings. 2 Kings is a very long narrative that actually starts with all the way back, almost right after the Torah concludes. There's a couple of intervening books, and tells the whole story of the kings of Israel and the kings of Judah, how those two kingdoms came to be separate, their conflicts with each other, internally, externally, and with the world, or at least the world around them. And much of what is described there happened. We have external evidence for it. Now, did it happen the way? Not necessarily. Did it happen at the when? Probably. And the destruction is one of those things. One of the most emotional moments I ever had was going into a place called the Israelite Tower. It's a very small, unvisited site in the Jewish quarter of Jerusalem. And while it sounds like it's in a lofty tower, that tower is now below ground level because, of course, the level of Jerusalem, like many of these ancient cities, have been built up over the years because they would, knock things down and build on top of them. And when I went in there, I saw the char marks from the burning of Jerusalem in 586 BCE. And those were carbon dated. That's really when it happened. We also have evidence of destruction in Lachish, a city nearby, which is much easier to excavate than the city of Jerusalem, which of course is open to all kinds of controversies if you even try to go near certain places to do it. The book of Jeremiah, and we believe Jeremiah was a real prophet. He also attests to it. The main tradition that's associated with mourning for this temple is that of fasting. It's not the only thing, and I'm going to talk about a few other pieces of it before we get to my story. But it's the book of Zechariah. It was a later prophet who speaks about fasting in this 5th month. He doesn't specify the date. So whether it was exactly on the 9th of Av or not, some say the 10th of Av, it's hard to know. Much, much later, the rabbis will come along, and in good Jewish fashion, they'll attribute some good old-fashioned Jewish guilt to it. And they'll say, oh, you know why this actually happened? Well, there's a story in the Torah that when the Israelites were wandering around for 40 days and 40 years, right? For 40 years, they sent scouts out, spies, to see what was going on in the land of Israel. None of this happened. It's all fictional. And the spies came back with a bad report. They said, there's giants there. We shouldn't go there. It's a bad place. Let's just settle where we are here in this wilderness. And they were punished by that. There were 2 spies who came back and gave a good report, and that's where we get the idea of a land flowing with milk and honey from those 2 guys. And the rabbis later said, well, the first temple was destroyed to punish that generation hundreds of years earlier that lost their faith in God. So just so you have a little Jewish guilt shoved in there. But it's also a little bit of a way of looking at some personal responsibility, even though it was their great-great-great-great-great-great-grandparents. Well, fortunately, all of that is fiction, but the destruction was real. The 9th of Av also speaks to the date of the second destruction of a temple. In the year 70 CE, the second temple, and now this is some 500 years later, is standing and falls in the Roman-Jewish war. And this is the war that we are familiar with from Josephus. It's a war, I don't know what just happened there, but this is a war that we know a lot about because there is attestation to it everywhere. This is the war that produced, for instance, the story of Masada, which Josephus spoke about. This is the war that brought to an end I won't say the kingdom of the Jews that was reestablished under the Maccabees, but in a sense, that having already fallen, this was the continuation of it. And it's the one that we think about the most because people in our imagination, we say that's where the diaspora began. Of course, the diaspora began with the earlier temple. Then there was a return, a partial return, and then there was a rebuilding, and the second temple was rebuilt and so forth. But it happened, according to most sources, in the month of Av. Whether the 9th or not, we can't say for sure. So in any case, they both happened around the same time, hundreds and hundreds of years apart. And by the time of Judaism that we're familiar with, rabbinical Judaism we call it, the Judaism founded by the rabbis who first appeared 2,200 approximately years ago, they have now established this as a fixed day of mourning. And ever since then, it's been viewed as such. It is a day of full fasting. And what do I mean by full fasting? Well, we're all familiar with Yom Kippur, whether we fast on it or not. Anybody know how many hours the Yom Kippur fast is? It's 25 hours, exactly. The reason it's 25 hours is because it's from sundown through nightfall. Shabbat lasts for 25 hours. There's a little wiggle room at the beginning of it for lighting candles and so forth. You wait for the 3 stars at the end of it. But when it comes to the fast on Yom Kippur and on Tisha B'Av, it's a 25-hour fast. And it's not an easy one either because it starts late. And what makes it even harder is that it's also a work day. If you have to go to work on Tisha B'Av, you go to work on Tisha B'Av. It's not that kind of day. It's like Purim. It's sort of actually the funhouse mirror or looking glass version of Purim, where Purim is so joyous and so forth. Tisha B'Av is so sad. And they have actually similar parallel traditions that are observed for both of them. The other fast days, by the way, that you might have heard about, and there's a bunch of them in Judaism that traditional Jews observe, those are kind of half fasts. If you get up early enough, you can eat breakfast. And at sundown, you can eat dinner. So those are kind of more like Ramadan fasts, I guess you call them, although the Jews were doing it a long time before that tradition began. The main focus of it is to arrive at synagogue in community in the middle of this fast and to go through a series of rituals that help, as when you're in mourning, it helps to get through a hard time. So in addition to fasting, and by the way, all the things that go with fasting, if you're not aware of it, Orthodox and conservative, and now more and more Reform Jews who are traditional, they avoid wearing leather shoes on Yom Kippur. The same is true on Tisha B'Av. They refrain from bathing. They refrain from anointing themselves, meaning putting on lotions, putting on perfumes, and from having sex. In addition, when you walk into a synagogue on the night of Tisha B'Av, and it's already rather late, you're going to see that the synagogue is dimly lit. Maybe a lot of candles are in use. The pews, the chairs, are either put away or covered over, and in their place are low stools. A lot of people will sit in small circles on the floor. And the last meal, just before arriving there, is not a joyous one like Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is sometimes a rushed meal, but it's a big, sumptuous feast. This is a simple meal. Sometimes it even features an egg and bread that's dipped in like the ashes of something that was cooked. So that would, of course, symbolize what? The destruction of the temples. When they arrive in synagogue, the main featured event is to hear the book of Lamentations. In Hebrew, it's called Echa. Echa means how could this happen to us? It is ahistorically attributed to the prophet Jeremiah, but it does seem to tell the story, as most historians agree, that it happened with these particular wars. The Assyrians who started this and the Babylonians who continued it kept good records, and much of it is recorded in their records and in other kinds of stelas and things that have been found. It's chanted in a very mournful tune. I was going to bring a recording, but it was such a big Ganze Megillah to bring it. It is, by the way, one of the Megillas. I know you think a Megillah is a scroll. So there are 5 Megillas, and this is one of them, Esther being the happy one, and this being the saddest one. Also read is Psalm 137, and this is a famous one, so you may know it. It's got kind of a yucky ending. I'm not going to read that part. But not that this is such a happy part, but this is the famous part. They read, "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat and wept as we thought of Zion," Zion being a synonym for Israel, a synonym for the land. "There on the poplars, there on the poplar trees, we hung up our lyres, our harps. Our captors asked us there to sing songs, our tormentors for amusement. Sing us one of your songs of Zion," they said. "How can we sing a song of Zion, of the Lord, on alien soil?" Here, this is famous. Many people have plaques in their homes that say this part of it. "If I forget thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand wither, let my tongue stick to my palate. If I cease to think of you, if I do not keep Jerusalem in memory, even at my happiest hour." So this was a profound expression of loss from the first temple, and it's an expression of loss that continued throughout. The day went on throughout history to sort of become a basket for all of the tragedies that Jews had absorbed, and they're reflected also in the service. A lot of people don't realize that there is creativity, even in Orthodox services, and one of the sources of this creativity are poems that have been written since medieval years and later, and on Tisha B'Av are known as kinot, or dirges, the singular being kinah. Each of these kinot serves as a poetic meditation on loss, and they cover the events of many historically accurate descriptions of tragedies that befell us. In the morning service, the evening service, there are many, many of these. The theme of suffering and mourning begins to dissipate as the afternoon goes on. It's the only weekday where men do not wear the talit and the tefillin, the phylacteries around the arm, and the talis, the prayer shawl, who do not wear these things in the morning service, but instead in the afternoon service. And then there are prayers of consolation that began to appear. And the Shabbat after Tisha B'Av is called Shabbat Nachamu, meaning the Shabbat of consolation. So that gives a little bit of an idea of it. As Tisha B'Av took on, however, these sad moments, it became an opportunity to, in many cases, mourn things that had just happened to them. So, for instance, we have, and they are still very popular, I should say, popularly recited, keynote like the Martyrs of Mainz, which is attributed to a rabbi who lived there, mourning the massacre in the late 11th century of the Jews during the First Crusade, as the Crusaders went through Germany and slaughtered them, and there's all kinds of things. You've taken my classes on this, and we've read some of those. The burning of the Talmud in Paris in the mid-13th century is another one for which there's a famous kinah. The expulsion from Spain has one, so they don't all come from Ashkenazic culture. One that I'm particularly familiar with is called the Ele Eskera. These I will remember. It's the martyrdom of 10 rabbis who were killed during the Bar Kokhba War, which was about 65 years after the destruction of the Second Temple. And it's read on Yom Kippur afternoon, too, in traditional communities. It's famous because of the rabbis who were in it, one of whom you've undoubtedly heard of, which would be Rabbi Akiva, who was remembered in that particular kinah. There are keynote that remember the persecutions in York, England, when they went into, I forget the name of the tower, but when they went in the tower, and then the tower was, for protection, the tower was burned down. The pogroms of the Khmelnytsky Ukrainian uprising, when Jews were killed in the mid-17th century, and on and on and on and on. Not only did Jews, of course, fold all of their mourning into this date, but the persecutors of Jews became very aware of the significance of this date. My former father-in-law, blessed memory, he was from a small town in Belarus, but it was a very prominent town, very well known. There was actually a movie made about it not too long ago. And in his town, he wasn't there at the time, he had been taken into the Soviet army. This was during the period of time when the Germans were now invading Soviet property. or Soviet territory, or Soviet claimed territory. And when the Einsatzgruppen came through, which were the kill squads for the Jews in these very many cities, which preceded in many ways the ghettoization and then ultimately the death camps, which turned it into much more of an industry and saved them money and bullets and so forth. But what date did they choose to call out all of the intelligentsia, all of the teachers, all of the leaders of this town, this little town of Evia? It was the 9th of Av in 1941. They got there just a few months after the invasion, and they knew that the 9th of Av would be a very good date to kind of push on the bruise, push on the wound. Blood libels and other kinds of similar accusations heightened frequently around Tisha B'Av, as they often did during the Easter season as well. Expulsions and other kinds of violence. The Jews were expelled from England around this time. We know absolutely that the extraordinarily important, historically, expulsion of the Jews from Spain in 1492 took place during this time. The decree, known as the Alhambra Decree, signed by King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, was signed on the 9th of Av. The date is a Christian date, of course, but they were very, very well aware of what they were doing and other things as well. So what does it mean today for us as humanistic Jews? We're not going to be fasting for 25 hours when next Tisha B'Av arrives. We're not going to come in here and start chanting Kinot. But it is an opportunity for us, I think, to reflect upon a number of things, a number of themes. And one of them, I think, is particularly relevant now. And so in the second part of my talk, I'm going to share a story with you. And hopefully we'll maybe generate just a little bit of conversation off of it, or at least some thought. One of the reasons, of course, is to memorialize those who died. There are those who believe today that the Holocaust, which is remembered on Tisha B'Av, that this should be the day on which it's remembered by the Jewish world. There were political reasons that the Zionist community, ultimately the State of Israel, chose April-May, and it was because of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. It was seen as a sign of Jewish rebellion, and that's why they wanted it there. The rest of the world chose January. I believe it was the liberation of Auschwitz. I meant to look that up. But it was a liberation. Okay, it was Auschwitz. The more religious Jews, especially the Haredi, the ultra-Orthodox Jews, said, no, we're going to put it on Tisha B'Av. We lost, and they lost among the most. Their losses were disproportional. And I think that there's some wisdom in that. Not saying that any of these other dates should be erased. We live in times that are still very close to the Holocaust, but neither I nor you will be around to fulfill my prediction that in 100 years or so, it's quite likely that the Jewish world will be remembering the Holocaust primarily on the Tisha B'Av. I won't be around to know. Maybe my grandson or his children will know. Another reason, not just the suffering, to talk about it, is that it's always been seen by Jewish tradition as, and I mentioned this earlier, a day to remind us of our resilience and a day of hope. There were stories that were made up. The rabbis made up a wonderful story saying that the Mashiach, the Messiah, when he comes to redeem the Jewish people, to return them all magically to the land of Israel, and so forth and so on, will be born on the very day of both temples' destructions, on the 9th of Av. So this is a sort of a symbolizing of hope amidst despair and a belief in future redemption that they had. But I think actually one of the most important reasons to talk about this, and this is a little preview for those of you who are going to be here on the high holidays, of what I'm going to talk about when I have my topic of anti-Semitism. Although this story is not about anti-Semitism, it is a story about what happens when Jewish people allow themselves to become so disunited, so caught up in petty arguments and even important arguments, that they allow it to result in what the rabbis called baseless hatred. Now, baseless hatred, as you'll see from this story, and we're going to talk about it afterwards, is not just about hatred that had no reason. Sometimes there's very good reasons that you don't like someone or that you're angry at someone. But there are ways of handling that. I particularly connect to the story I'm about to tell you because I think that it is important for humanistic Jews. We have been, as a Jewish world, fractured by what's going on right now. Everybody has a different opinion. My entire goal of leadership in this congregation has been to keep us together, to remind us that we are entitled to our differences. And you know, if you read my commentary that I wrote in New Detroit, that's enough. I don't need to say anything else. If you know, you know. If you don't care to know, you don't have to know. You can ask me or not ask me. But my point that I made before I began to talk about my personal issues, and the point that I made to the board, I think a week after this war started, are the same. That we have to learn to live with these differences. As a humanistic congregation, we like to think we're part of a like-minded community, and we are. But like-minded doesn't mean we're going to see the same way on everything. We had a reading about war here. It's true, humanists don't agree on everything about war. We agree that the world is a naturalistic place. Sherwin Wine's reading from tonight. We believe that human beings have the agency to make decisions about what happens. And we, as a free thought community, and that's what we are not a you have to believe this and this is the humanistic Jewish way. We are a free thought community. We have to be very clear that what's required is only this: courteousness, courtesy, respect, dignity, respecting the dignity of the other, kindness to the extent that we can be with people with whom we severely differ. I think we're making it through this, but it doesn't always feel that way. And it certainly doesn't feel that way when we look at the larger Jewish world. And that's what this story tonight, a story from the Talmud, is about. A story about how the way we treat each other can really bring tragedy upon us. It's called the story of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. Those are two Aramaic names. It takes place roughly 2,000 plus years ago, a little less than 2,000 years ago, right before the eruption of what is called by Jewish historians, all historians, the Jewish Wars. The Jewish War against Rome, to be specific, which broke out in 66 CE, so not terribly long ago, if we think about the age of the world and the age of the Jews. And here's what happened. The Talmud begins by saying, Jerusalem was destroyed on account of Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. What happened? Well, there was a certain man, a man who goes nameless in the Talmud, we'll just call him the host, who had a friend named Kamsa, but had a nemesis, an enemy even, named Bar Kamsa. Now this fella, being a prominent man in the community, a man of means, he decided one day he was going to throw a great feast in his very sumptuous home, invite many, many people, prominent folks from the community, sages, rabbis, leaders, priests. And of course, as it was the case in those days, you didn't have the mail. You had a servant who would take the invitations around and go find people. There wasn't addresses necessarily, so sometimes the servant would get something wrong. And this particular servant who served our friend the host, the nameless fella, he went and mistakenly delivered Kamsa's invitation to Bar Kamsa. Once the party began, the host made the rounds, greeting his guests, and when he came up to the place where Bar Kamsa was standing, talking to mutual friends, one can only assume, he looked at him and he said sternly, "You, my enemy? What are you doing here?" Now, in English, this doesn't sound as good as it does in Hebrew or in Aramaic. Arise and leave. So I'll translate it to you. Get the hell out of my house. That's what he said. Bar Kamsa, embarrassed now and not wanting to feel further humiliated, said to him, "Listen, since I already came, allow me to stay. I'll pay for anything I eat and drink. Whatever it is, please just do not embarrass me in front of everyone here. But the host said to him, discourteously, unkindly, no, leave. Bar Kamsa said to him, I'll give you half the money you've paid for this whole party. Please don't put me in this situation. Don't embarrass me this way. The host said to him, no, get out of my house. Bar Kamsa said, I'll pay for the entire party. Just let me stay. It's not because he wanted to be at the party so much. It's because this was humiliating. And the host, of course, stood his ground and said, no, you will leave. And then he took him by the arm and escorted him out. And while the Talmud doesn't tell us this, you can see in your imagination the crowd parting, people looking upon this spectacle as this man is dragged out of the host's house. Once he was on the outside of the home, he realized, this Bar Kamsa did, that there were more people to be angry about than he could even count. Why did others not speak up? My friends were there. Why did the sages, our rabbis, the leaders of our community, why did they say nothing? Why did they not protest his actions? They saw how humiliated I was. What did he take away from this? He made an oath. In Aramaic, Echul Kurza, I'll get them. And he devised a plan. The Talmud said that he went to the emperor, and the Talmud is actually referring not to the emperor, but to a man who was the governor of Judea, Vespasian, who would become the emperor. But needless to say, he was an important person. It reminds us that the tale is, of course, fictional, but just because it's a piece of fiction doesn't mean it doesn't reflect reality. He said to the emperor, now about to exercise his plot, the Jews are in rebellion against you. You need to know this. The emperor said to him, I have no evidence of this. Who says that this is the case? My spies tell me nothing. Bar Kamsa said, I know it from my sources, and I have a way that you can discover how they really feel about you, for they lie. Go and test them. Do this. Send them a sacrificial offering that shall be brought in honor of the government for their priests to make, and see whether they sacrifice it. Now, this was a common thing in those days. A leader would ask to have an animal sacrificed by the religion, another religion. There was a lot of them in those days and all over the Roman Empire. And it was a way of both showing respect for the religion that you sent it to. Remember, these animals were eaten. They were the sustenance of the priesthood. And it was a way that then you would prompt a blessing. And, you know, we don't do it here, but there are prayers for the government said in every synagogue, every standard synagogue in the world. Prayer for the king in England, prayer for the government here, whatever it is. So this was a kind of a common thing. So the emperor sent him with a choice 3-year-old calf. This is actually a big bull, and a very tasty one, I'm sure, for those of you who eat meat. And here Bar Kamsa put into effect his plan. As he was traveling to the temple, he stopped and he made a blemish on the calf. Now, what does that mean? Under Jewish law, a blemish in a certain place renders the calf ineligible for sacrifice. They have to be complete and pure. It says so in the Bible. Now, this was not necessarily the practice of the Romans, but it was the practice of the Jews. So when Bar Kamsa brought the animal to the temple, and as was their practice with every animal that was sacrificed, the priests examined it for its fitness. They saw the blemish and realized that they had no way of explaining to the Gentiles who were around as well, who worked for the Romans, how exactly they were going to now refuse this generous sacrifice, not without creating the impression that they were blaming or rebelling against the government. Some of the sages who were consulted said, sacrifice it anyway. But other sages said, if you sacrifice it anyway, all the Jews are going to bring blemished stuff, which means their cheapest stuff. The sages said, if we don't sacrifice it, we have to make sure that Bar Kamsa never gets to the emperor. And some of them plotted his murder. But the others had a good thought not to do that. And ultimately, Bar Kamsa did return with news that the animal was not sacrificed, with an explanation that the emperor, who didn't know anything about Jewish law, could not accept. And as a result of this, the war began between the Jews and the Romans. Now this story, it's a simple story. Anybody can understand this story, right? It starts with a very kind of normal human reaction. I didn't invite you to my party. Get out. And it escalates. We don't know why the host of this place and Bar Kamsa didn't like each other. Maybe they had good reasons. But clearly, their reasons were not enough to start a war. What was enough to start a war was to see the communal leaders allow the bickering to go on, allow the humiliation of a member to take place, allow people to be, in this case Bar Kamsa, to be so mistreated, so humiliated, that he did something radically stupid and dangerous and slandered his own people, and then framed them to prove the slander. This is what the rabbis were talking about when they spoke about baseless hatred. They didn't mean something that was not indeed maybe substantive. The fact that they didn't tell us what the host and Bar Kamsa were fighting about to begin with, it could have been something very important, but it really doesn't matter. Because when you bring other people into it, when you create a situation, when we create a situation that fractures our community through discourteousness, through unkindness, through ill treatment based upon different opinions, whatever they are, through humiliation and embarrassment, this is the kind of thing that fractures a community. Ultimately, the rabbis will go on to say that it was because of the fractiousness of the community that the temple fell. The unity was gone. War broke out. The rabbis told this story not because they believed it was true. It's clearly not. They told this story because they wanted Jews throughout the years to understand that we are a small family. They were then, we are now. We are 15 million, barely. Half of us live in Israel and have their own point of view. The other half in America fighting over things about denominations, about who is a Jew, about all of these kinds of things, about politics, whatever it is. We don't share a religion. I'm going to talk about that on the holidays. We don't even have a religion as humanistic Jews, other than humanism, which is not really a theistic faith like that of our fellow Jews, of the majority of them anyway. What we share is a familial tie. What we share is the desire that we want to be Jews together. We want to have this tradition together. We want to feel belonging. We can viciously disagree with each other in the sense that we strongly differ, but we cannot viciously disagree with each other in the sense that we're vicious to each other. If you have any thoughts to share before I conclude with my nechemta, my word of comfort, I invite you to. Natan.
You know, all the things that we commemorate, I can say commemorate on Tisha B'Av, especially the two major things, the destructions of both temples, were something that the rabbis actually were opposed. They opposed a rebellion against Rome both times.
Yes, they did.
Because they knew there is no way little Judah can defeat the Roman Empire.
And the tempers were so built up over what the real issues were, which was not this. There were denominational issues, if you will. There were theological issues. There were political issues. There was so much divisiveness, and it very, very much reminds us of what's happening today. And look who's taking advantage of it: the anti-Semites. We're sitting here having polite discussions about whether anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. Okay, that's a legitimate discussion to have. I happen to have one belief, other people have another belief. But honestly, I don't really care. Because ultimately, what I look at is who's behaving in an anti-Semitic way. When I open up an Instagram or some social media piece and I see an Israeli actress promoting her new movie, Gal Gadot, promoting Snow White, and every word under it, 5,000 responses, accuse her of being a baby murderer. And worse. That's anti-Semitism. When synagogues are attacked, when Jewish people are killed, that's anti-Semitism. And it's not just from the left, it's not just from the right, it's from anybody who has a predisposition to it, and we have opened the door. Because each of us taking our own sides and humiliating each other somehow has made it okay for them to do it. And this is part of what I'm going to talk about when I speak about anti-Semitism. Trump putting his finger in our wound, telling us who's a Jew and who's not a Jew. The other side doing it too. The radicals, as it happens, we have a more radical candidate on one side than the other. But radicals everywhere. People have disliked Jews for a long time. They don't need a lot of excuse. Candace Owens is one terrific conservative, right? Beloved by MAGA, and one of the most vile anti-Semites you'll ever hear, catching her language in supposed opposition to Israel, but using every anti-Semitic, vile stereotype that you can imagine. So when this happens, and they see us at each other's throats, not respectfully disagreeing, not having forums, but having literally fights, then it becomes worse for us. It always becomes worse for us. Anti-Semitism is a virus that works that way, and I'll talk about it more on the holiday. Esther. No, you're thinking of the Omer. The Omer is a period that you don't have joyous times except on the 33rd day of the Omer, and that's a period between Passover and Shavuot. There is a 3-week period leading up to the 9th of Av, known as the 3 weeks, which is from the breach of the walls of Jerusalem to supposedly the destruction of the temple. So that's a period of mourning too. Then you come out of it and the mourning is over. Any other questions? Any other comments? All right, well, the hour is late. It's 8:20, and I told Arthur I'm stopping at 8:20 no matter how many comments there are or not. And we're going to conclude with what I consider to be a wonderful song of unity for both us and for all the people in the world. So we have to remember we are all human. And it's called Hine Ma Tov, but it's a different one.
Hine Ma Tov, O Manaim Shevat Yachad. Hine Ma Tov, O Manaim Shevat Gam Yachad. Behold how good it is when people dwell together, living as one people. And what keeps us safe and strong is that we have each other, one human family across the land. Hine Ma Tov u'manaim shevet achim gam yachad. Hine Ma Tov u'manaim shevet achim gam yachad.
I promised I was going to end with love. 6 days after Tisha B'Av is Tu B'Av, the Jewish Day of Love, and I already wrote a commentary about it, so you can read it in last week's commentary. Thank you to Joseph for the beautiful music, to David for the streaming, Arthur for the slides, to all of you. Shabbat Shalom. Join us for the Oneg.
Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, hey! Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom. One more time.